I want to call to order this February 5th, 2020 meeting of the Arcata City Council. And the Scout Pack 95 and Troop 15 will lead us in the flag salute, and please rise if you choose to do so.
Color Guard, attention. Audience, please rise. Color Guard, forward march. Color Guard, halt. Prepare to post the colors. Color Guard, post the colors. Color Guard, salute. Audience, salute. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 2. Color Guard, retrieve the colors. No. Color Guard, retrieve the colors. Sorry. I'm sorry, leave it there. Color Guard, about. Face. Color Guard, forward march. Color Guard, halt. Color Guard, dismissed. Audience, please be seated. Thank you.
Could I have a roll call, please? Here.
Vice Mayor Patino.
Here.
Councilmember Watson.
Here.
Councilmember Pereira.
Here.
Councilmember Ornelas is absent.
Next is ceremonial matters. The first proclamation recognizing February 2nd through 8th, 2020 as Scouting Anniversary Week will be led by Councilmember Pereira.
Whereas Chicago publisher William D. Boyce founded the Boy Scouts of America on February 8, 1910, after learning of the Scouting movement in London. And whereas to date there have been more than 126 million Scouts across America, over 2.43 million of which achieved the Eagle Scout Award, Scouting's highest rank. And whereas the purpose of the Boy Scouts is to develop community members who are physically, mentally, and emotionally fit, have a high degree of self-reliance and resourcefulness, personal values based on religious concepts, the desire and skills to help others, and a keen respect for the basic rights of all people. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Arcata recognizes the 110th anniversary of the Boy Scouts of America, designates February 2nd through 8th, 2020 as Scouting Anniversary Week in Arcata, and expresses appreciation to the Scouts, their families, and the many volunteers of the Cub Scout packs, Boy Scout troops, Explorer posts, Venture crews, and Sea Scout ships of the Pacific Rivers District of the Boy Scouts of America for their dedication to our local youth. Thanks to your efforts, over 1,000 young people in Humboldt County are getting the support, friendship, and mentoring they need to lead successful and fulfilling lives through scouting. Signed today by Mayor Winkler, and I'd like to invite up representatives of Scouts of Pack 95 and Troop 15.
On behalf of the Arcata Scout Troop 15 and Pack 95, it is my honor to accept this proclamation during declaring this Scout Week. As past and present Scouts have helped this community with service projects, in the future we hope to continue this tradition. We would like to thank the City of Arcata for their support. Thank you for this recognition.
Next is proclamation recognizing February 2020 as V-Month in Arcata, to be read by Councilmember Watson.
Whereas V-Day is a global movement to stop violence against women and girls. Each year, V-Day, Humboldt produces theatrical, educational, and artistic events to generate broader awareness of harm done to women and girls around the world and in our community. And whereas violence against women does not distinguish between class, race, age, or nationality. 1 in 3 women are beaten, sold into sexual slavery, burned, mutilated, verbally and sexually abused, and made to feel inferior in every country. Too many women are spending their lives recovering from, resisting, or surviving violence rather than creating and thriving. And whereas fundraised through V-Day Humboldt, events are donated to local and international groups to help further V-Day's mission to stop the silence, end the violence, and to support programs in communities around the world seeking to end rape, battery, incest, and other forms of gendered violence, wherever it is happening. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Arcata hereby recognizes the month of February 2020 as V-Month in Arcata and rededicates Arcata as a violence and rape-free zone. The Council joins V-Month participants in condemning sexual victimization locally and globally. Signed today by Mayor Winkler, and accepting we have Jesse Haba.
Thank you, City of Arcata, for supporting us for the past 8 years for this event, for declaring the month of February as a chance to recognize violence and discrimination against women and children in our community and around the world. And we appreciate your support, and we appreciate the support of our V-Day Humboldt hosting 1 Billion Rising. It'll be the 8th year on the plaza this year. It'll be not this Friday, but next Friday. We'll be on the plaza from 1 to 3 with music and information, and there'll be a flash mob event with many students from Stony Brae Middle School coming and dancing to the song Break the Chain. We invite everyone to come out and join us. You don't have to know the song to join. You just be there in solidarity and raise our voices through dance. Thank you very much.
Next is the annual report from the Historic Landmarks Committee.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. My name is Don Tuttle, Chair of the Humboldt Landmarks Committee, or the Historic Landmarks Committee. So first, I'll just go through what we accomplished in 2019. We worked on the city's historic resources promotional programs, and we provided a recommendation to the Planning Commission and the City Council to list the Chapman House on the local historic register. We've been working and formed a subcommittee to assist staff and HSU interns in developing a citywide historical survey. We've sponsored several California Preservation Foundation webinars related to California environmental quality updates regarding historic preservation, and surveying historic resources. And we've been working on the National Register designation for the Arcata City Plaza for, feels like 2 or 3 years, and we will continue to work on that. We worked on language for the following plaques on the plaza: the Jacoby Storehouse, the Kinley Statue, and the Christian Temperance Foundation. For 2020, we have 5 goals. The first one is to coordinate with the local tribal historic preservation officers to share information and better understand and honor Arcata's pre-settlement history. Sort of related to that is to expand inclusivity, incorporating racial equity, recognizing pre-settlement history and culture as important to Arcata's history. We want to finalize the 139-page 2012 context statement prepared by Suzanne Guerra and forward that to the Planning Commission and City Council for approval and adoption. We want to finalize the rapid assessment checklist with the assistance of the Humboldt Landmarks Committee subcommittee and isolate potential areas of the city of significance to begin community outreach. And as I mentioned, we will continue to refine the content of the Arcata Plaza National Register application.
So, questions?
Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Don, how are things going as far as Mills Act and properties pursuing Mills Act?
And your question is, how is that working out?
Yes, within the city.
As to my knowledge, it's working.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have the Chapman House applied, and the Daggett May later. The Daggett House on 16th, I think it is, and G.
Yeah.
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is early oral communications. This 15-minute time period is provided for people to address the council on matters not on the agenda. At the conclusion of all oral communications, the council may respond to statements. Any request that requires council action will be set by the council for a future agenda or referred to staff. Speakers addressing the council will be limited to 2 minutes. All or other oral and written communications will be heard at this meeting under agenda item 11. So if anybody wants to speak on an item not on the agenda, please come forward.
Hi. I want to first recognize that we are on stolen Wiat land. It's important for us to recognize that and also be taking steps as community members and as council to do what we can to repair that harm. And I'm here to speak for Josiah Lawson, who was murdered almost 3 years ago, and still his murder is walking the streets, putting all of the rest of our community in harm's way. And also not addressing the system that's allowing this to be unsolved. So we have a police department that is not able to deal with chaos, isn't able to deal with a serious event that requires them to be decent human beings and to put people's lives in priority, as opposed to making themselves comfortable. So there's a lot of inherent racism in a lot of our systems that needs to be addressed. And I know that you all have heard me say this over and over and over again, so I definitely am talking to the audience as well, that I want to make sure that everyone's aware that this murder is still unsolved and that we're not safe. And that our law enforcement is not here to protect all of us, only some of us. And the fact that we can't rely on any follow-through from really any local government agency on finding justice is disappointing, but it's also inherent in the system. And so just know that we are still waiting for this. We're still waiting to hear from the police report, which was supposed to be in a long time ago. We're still waiting to hear how it is that each individual person is working to find justice. So we want to hear your personal statements as well. So, justice for Josiah.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm a business student at Humboldt State, and I wanted to let you guys know that we are getting ready for Startup Weekend. It's March 6th through 8th, and we would love it if you guys could join us. It happens once a year, and it's basically sponsored by Google, and everybody gets together, students. It's ages for, I think 11-year-olds can even come and up, and everyone gets together, they join a team, and they come up with this brilliant idea of, okay, what business would I like to start that's sustainable? And so it's like a 3-day event. And then joined with them are accountants, attorneys, marketing advisors to help them kind of formulate their business plan. And then the final day, they pitch their idea. And so there's, I think, 3 elected people, and it's just really exciting to be able to see students come together to do that. I brought some flyers if you guys are interested in just kind of spreading the word. And yeah, we would love for you to join us, and we love you guys. So thank you so much. I'm going to give this from my assistant. Thanks. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Is this on? Awesome. Hello, good afternoon. My name is Brian Vargas. Hello, community members. I just wanted to say hi and introduce myself. I just came back from Bakersfield, California for being gone for a year. I'm restarting my engineering studies at Humboldt State University, and I'm also participating in Startup Week. I would love to see some involvement from y'all if possible. Also from anybody in the community is welcome to reach out and get involved. As far as coming back, I feel just as safe as in any city, and I really appreciate everything you guys do for being our public servants. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Joanne McGarry, and I just want to thank the City Council for back in September recognizing the need for our community to declare a climate emergency along with 700 other municipalities throughout the world, because we are in a climate emergency. So on September 18th, you did declare that, and I just want to keep that in our thoughts as we go through many of the items on the agenda, and considering everything that we do in terms of being in a climate emergency. We got king tides coming up this weekend, and again, the sea level rise issue is something we need to be very concerned about. Climate refugees and all that coming to our communities because the other places will become unlivable. So all the things we need to do to adapt. I just really appreciate your acknowledging that reality, so thank you.
Thank you. Next is the consent calendar. All matters, or does anyone want to comment on any of the public comments? All right. Next is the consent calendar. All matters on the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the City Council and are enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of any of these items. If discussion is required, that item is removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. At the end of the reading of the consent calendar, council members or members of the public can request that an item be removed for separate discussion. A, approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of January 16th, 2020. Approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of January 21st, 2020, 8 a.m. C, biweekly report on general warrants. D, adopt ordinance number 1526, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata, amending the Arcata Municipal Code, Title 7, Public Works, Chapter 3, Water, Article 9, discontinuance of service, waive reading of the text and consent to read by title only. E, adopt ordinance number 1527, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata, amending Chapter 5, 3.5 of Title 5 of the Arcata Municipal Code to establish regulations related to single-use disposable foodware items and plastic bottle restrictions. Title 5, Sanitation and Health, Chapter 3.5, Waste Reduction. Waive reading of the text and consent to read by title only. F, adopt resolution number 190-50, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata authorizing application to the Infill Infrastructure Grant Program. G, declare a vacancy on the Public Safety Committee due to absences for a term expiring on September 30th, 2024. So would any council member like to pull an item?
Staff would like to pull F.
All right. Would any member of the public like to pull an item from the consent calendar? All right. So I can accept the motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar minus item F.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Could you say about item F?
Yes, on item F, staff is not recommending any changes to the actual resolution. It just appears as though the scope of the grant could be a little bit broader, and so we would like the council to know if it becomes possible during the final writing of the grant that we may wish to add in some improvements to the Redwood Park master plan that we're working on, and potentially along 8th and 9th Streets as well.
And there is a mention of the Isaacson project, so I think it would be best if I recuse myself on this particular item. And since it's been pulled, that would have to be handled by our Vice Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So any public have any comment on item F? That's adopt resolution number 19050, resolution of the City Council of the City of Arcata authorizing application to the Infill Infrastructure Grant Program. So any public comment on that?
Oh, so I should leave the room then, right?
Well, no, you don't have to leave.
Do I have to leave the room on this?
Unless additional discussion ensues, but if there's no discussion, you can stay.
All right.
I'll make a motion to approve item F.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. So next, on this next item, which is the approval of the Creekside Mixed-Use Occupancy Residential Annexation Project, that I do work for Danco, the developer for this project, so I'm going to recuse myself and turn it over to the Vice Mayor.
You know what? Can you pass?
Good evening, Vice Mayor and council members. Oh, I'm sorry, are you ready?
Yeah, mine's over there. We're just adjusting here.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, Director of Community Development, thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good evening, Vice Mayor and council members. Tonight before you is the first opportunity to start the formal approval for the Creekside Homes project. I believe we've covered many of the topics in past meetings, and to my knowledge, we don't have any outstanding issues that haven't already been covered. So I will orient you to the actions for tonight, and then leave it to your questions to guide any staff report beyond just that. And I do want to point out to you that you received public comment in attachment B that was received before the drafting of the staff report, but you also received some public comment in your blue folder items tonight, so I wanted to direct your attention to that. The structure of tonight's recommendation is to open the public hearing, receive the staff report, and take any public comment, and then adopt resolutions number 19037, which is the EIR adoption of the findings of facts and statement of overriding considerations. Resolution 19044, which forms the findings for approval for the various actions that will be taken in these documents, the resolutions and ordinances. Resolution 19039, which is the intent to annex. It's the City Council's notice to LAFCO that we would like to annex the Creekside Homes project area, as well as Enos Park and other parcels that are identified in the maps there. And then Resolution 19045, which will authorize various general plan amendments necessary to annex the property and identify land use designations. Here, under the recommendation bullet number 4, we had introduced ordinance 1524. We're going to ask that you hold on that. The actual development agreement language is still being, the specific language is still being reviewed by the various parties. The terms have not changed, but that but that document is still under review. And then the 5th bullet is to to introduce ordinance 1523, consent to read by title, waive reading the text and consent to read by title, and then continue that to the consent calendar. We did want to point out too that the ordinance requires a 3-0 vote to pass, so that would require a unanimous vote of those council members before you tonight. I'd be happy to address any specific questions that you may have. Otherwise, I think it's time to turn it over to the public and to your deliberations.
Thank you. So ordinance 1524, we're not going to deal with tonight?
That's correct. We're going to ask that you continue the hearing and that we would bring that back on February 19th for an introduction.
So February 19th, we'd introduce 1524 and adopt 1523.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Any council members? Anything you want to say now? Okay. Okay, I'm going to open the public comment for comment on Creekside development, and we'll give you 3 minutes, and if you queue up, it'll be easier. So, did you?
Is there any chance there could be the picture of the road connection up there?
David?
I mean, you have I know Sean Armstrong gave you a whole bunch of slides and asked to have them available at the last meeting, which was canceled. And then the meeting, 2 meetings ago, you promised to have those slides. And I know Sean Armstrong was expecting it, and the protesters came. And then there was a meeting that we were not notified. So I think you could at least put the road connection picture that you've drawn or the one that Sean drew. Please?
I'll defer.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and start your comment now. Did you have something to say?
Yeah, I would just say we did make those slides available to the council. They have them in written form. I'm happy to have David try to pull up during her 3 minutes. I can't guarantee that we'll be able to pull something up in that time frame, though.
So we just assume everybody knows this by memory. We just assume everybody knows this by memory. Okay. No need for a laser pointer. I am Karen Davidson, and I live at 1887 Q Street, which is the intersection of Foster in the county and Q Street in the city. We have been coming to meetings since May as a family, and we have been hoping that this whole thing will be handled at least safely. I mean, originally I had some hopes for some attractive green space, but I've heard that the green space is going to be mitigated by a park elsewhere. I'd hoped the wetlands would be correctly mitigated, but I heard in the meeting that we had to watch on video after the meeting that the wetlands are going to be mitigated partly by a forest elsewhere. You know, I'd hope there'd be an attractive bridge, maybe a boardwalk, some stop signs, that the kids wouldn't have to intersect with a freeway connection. And it doesn't look like we get any of that. So at this point, I'm sort of begging. I know there's LOS, which is level of service, and it's how fast cars get through towns. And that won't be legal after July. And I would love to have you guys answer at this meeting why that's what everything is based on. At the last meeting, when Paul asked for a stop sign, when anyone asked for a stop sign, anywhere, Q Street, 11th, it was all only after the cars prove it's necessary. That's level of service. It won't be legal after July. So we're begging, really, for a dozen other things. But at least, can we have some stop signs? Can there not be a roundabout at Alliance that will allow people to go directly from the freeway all the way to Samoa down Jackson Ranch and all of that without having to stop except for children, animals? I mean, can there please be some stop signs? I'd love to have a bridge. I'd love to have there be lower density. I'd love to have the wetlands be actually sufficient to handle the water that they expect to have coming in the next few decades. There's so many things that we would love to have, but mostly I'd like an answer for why instead of the bicycle and pedestrian friendly vehicle miles traveled, which is going to be the law in July, why you are instead using the level of service, which is how fast you can get the cars right past our house, right past those schools, right past all those farm animals without even a planned stop sign. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see you did get a mappa. Please leave it. I'm sure there will be other people, my family, interested in seeing it. Yeah, I think there might be one stop sign here.
Should I go? So my name is Sue Snido, and I live next to the Ennis Park expansion. And I was reading the final document that's up for approval today. And it still says in there that there's going to be over 5 acres of prime ag land that's converted to non-agricultural zoning. And so I've been trying to figure this out, and I came to the Planning Commission meetings, and one of the commissioners was also interested in this issue of the annexation and whether or not this prime ag land would be converted to non-agricultural purposes. And so that concern was brought up, and I remember Mark did address it, saying that the council could put some constraints on that to say that there would still have to be agricultural uses there. But right now, as the document that is up for approval, it does say that 5 acres, that Ennis Park expansion, will be converted to non-agricultural lands. And when I spoke a couple meetings ago, I did bring up the issue that this area, that Ennis Park expansion, is in It's in the Greenbelt plan for the city of Arcata. The community there's no sidewalk, so it's not really zoned for, creating public facilities or soccer fields or high use. So I would ask the council to take a look at that Ennis Park expansion and see if you could, as the planning commissioner brought up, put some kind of restriction included in the document that's going to be approved to retain some agricultural value to that land. Right now it says that will go completely to non-agricultural uses. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
My family walks me to school.
On Foster Avenue. There you go. Hi, I'm Sean Armstrong. I live at 1887 Q Street, and I have written you a letter to consider for the specific issues. The ones I'll remind is that I think that the neighborhood has come forward at all the planning commission meetings, as well as the city council meetings, to explain that Heather Lane and Wisteria, as they are now, are not very safe. They could be better. And that what the traffic study says is that it would be a tripling of traffic. So that should be dealt with more assertively at this stage. There's been lots of comments and suggestions. I think you have actionable suggestions to address and mitigate the concerns. I think that this is a good idea. It's not the best idea, but it's good enough. So the issue still comes as to how does the city make Foster Avenue safer as it goes down? And I think that we've also requested that Janes Road have a stop sign. These are not big requests. I want to back up what Sue spoke to, that the neighborhood around Ennis Park would like that park to be preserved, probably as it is. I think that this council shouldn't be the council that develops farmland while it simultaneously has a Greenbelt goal. My family is willing to adopt a similar conservation easement on the land that we own here. It would be similar to the one that we worked out with Cypress Grove on their farmland, and what you guys would be adopting for then the land that we rent right now, and then hopefully what you'd adopt for Ennis Park. We'd have a continuous green belt that the city would have helped create, and that's something that we can contribute to. Lastly, I think that the city needs to think about further than Janes, because that is the Hammond Trail. And I see people bicycling by all the time. I don't think that's going to decrease, especially as you make an even better bike trail here, but it really ends at Janes now. It's offered to go all the way down to the entrance to the Sun Valley Floral. And from that point on, I think that the city should work with the county to make a separated path on the county road, even a couple of feet, just to make it safer if there's a tripling of traffic.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Shale Peck Kraus, and I am the farmer and owner of Tule Fog Farm, which is on Foster Avenue. I wanted to encourage you guys to make the agricultural easement an organic agricultural easement. There are lots of residents and soon to be more residents that surround this farmland. It's very close to the city, and any pesticide drift that was coming off this land would affect many, many households, including children, and would really be a huge detriment to the neighborhood there. So please keep the community safe and make it an organic ag easement. I have come up here a number of times now asking that dark skies be a condition of approval, and I'm very disappointed that that has not yet been made a condition of approval. It's a simple thing to add. It really preserves a valuable asset that we have in the bottoms for wildlife, for recreation. We should be making sure that there is no more light pollution out there. Sun Valley Floral does enough. We do not need more light pollution out there. Please make dark skies a condition of approval. Living on Foster, I see a constant stream of pedestrians and bikers and farmers who use this, the bottom section of Foster. As a farmer, every day I'm walking animals down the farm. Every person that I have talked to who lives there, who uses the road, does not feel like it's a very safe road and is very concerned about there being a connection to the upper Foster and about that severely impacting the usability for the community. I want to encourage you guys to please choose a connection that routes upper Foster people coming from the Sunset Alliance area, that routes them through the development before connecting to the bottoms part of Foster. That would reduce the freewayness of the road and reduce the likelihood of people speeding from the 101 connection and the Alliance connection through Foster out into the bottoms just to get to Manila, Samoa, and Eureka. So something that routes them through the development before spinning back out onto Foster would really severely reduce the car flow and make it safer for everybody who's using that road. I want to say I do approve of the development itself. I know we need senior housing. I think it's a good use of the land. It's already bordered by a bunch of residences. But I am very concerned about the road connection itself impacting the whole community that uses this road. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else wanting to speak on Creekside development? Okay, Alex, one more.
Hello, my name is Alex Stillman, and I really think this is a good project for our community. We need to have health care. We need to have a variety of health care for our seniors, and I would suggest that you move forward on this annexation. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, last call. Anybody else wants to talk on Creekside? Otherwise, we're going to go back to staff and try to answer some of those questions. Did you have something, Sophia? Yeah. Is the applicant here and want to speak, or?
The applicant had a calendaring issue and unfortunately isn't available tonight. Wanted to express their regrets and apologies for not being able to attend.
Okay, thank you. So, council members, any questions for staff?
No questions. I think just based on some of the public comment that we got, I just want to clarify, I mean, it seems like we came to agreement on the organic agricultural easement, conservation easement, so.
I don't think that's exactly what it was.
Or that it wasn't saying organic certified, but the principles of organic farming. I remember to give that flexibility over time in case
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just not specifically using the term organic, but not be pesticide, and herbicide-free.
Yeah, so essentially what the condition says is that organic practices, not necessarily organic certification, shall be maintained on the property in perpetuity.
Okay, thank you. So organic, but without the certificate.
Exactly.
Thank you.
But yeah, I just wanted to just make sure that was addressed, that was something that we did find consensus on.
Anything?
Not at this time.
Yeah, I had a comment on the Ennis Park expansion. It's been on our maps for probably since the subdivision was built. And so for me, I've always looked at that Ennis Park 5-acre expansion thing as being a park. Its purpose was to be a park for the last 20, 30 years, even though it's zoned AE.
Yeah, it was actually closer to 50 years. The city has owned the park, purchased with park bond money. The entirety of the project associated with Ennis Park for this decision is simply whether to annex it and then to zone it public facilities, which would allow it to be a park. It's identified on several different policy documents as such. So this makes it consistent with those earlier policy decisions. There is no decision at this point to change the use. There's no decision about what the future use will be. There will be another public process that's associated with determining how to use that land. And so at this point, the conversion mitigation that's associated with the annexation and rezoning is simply the rezoning impact. And so we're not saying that it's going to be converted to another use other than what it is now. So that's important to keep in mind. If you wanted, I could hit on a couple of the issues, in particular the dark skies issue, which has been brought up at almost every public hearing. And I just did want to draw your attention to condition E4. I can find the page number for you, but it's in your conditions of approval packet, which is under, it starts on page 137. It's deeper into the findings resolution. But condition E4 requires dark sky compliance. It's also included in a mitigation measure in the EIR. So part of the mitigation monitoring and reporting program will be to ensure that the project comports with dark sky principles as outlined by the Dark Skies organization. I don't have the name on the top of my head right now. And then I wanted to be clear that the wetlands that are being impacted on site, 100% of the wetlands are being mitigated on site. And we did go over this in some detail in the last hearing, but I'll just remind you that 100% of the wetlands are being mitigated on site. Of those mitigated wetlands, nearly 100% will be planted with riparian vegetation. We're not letting the developer count that riparian vegetation enhancement on site towards the riparian vegetation impacts. And so even though the entire block that's basically east of the, the development, the road that gets to the memory care facility is going to be rehabbed riparian vegetation, we're asking the developer to give us additional mitigation which we're using off-site for riparian enhancement, not for wetland enhancement. So we can get into that if there are additional questions. And then in terms of the level of service and the road, our city engineer can speak more to the design issues that came up around that, but I wanted to clarify that what is changing in state law is that level of service will no longer be able to be used in environmental analysis to establish that an environmental impact has happened. Level of service will still be able to be used to evaluate what the impact of projects are relative to the wait times for vehicles. And despite the fact that this environmental analysis, like every environmental analysis heretofore, uses level of service as a basis for determining that there was in fact an environmental impact, and that there is in fact a mitigation associated with that, and the developer is being required to pay into a mitigation program. The traffic study evaluated non-motorized modes of transportation, both from a safety standpoint and from a from a path standpoint. So looking at the circulation for those non-motorized transportation modes. And the mitigation that's being proposed that is using level of service impact to create that mitigation is improving bike and ped safety. And so there are other elements that are related to level of service impact. We've certainly got that in the environmental document. But I just wanted to clarify that it's not like level of service is being banned and stricken from the law, and that we're here right on the verge of that banning, making a decision based on level of service, something that's not going to be applicable in a couple of months. It will be applicable.
Thanks. Natra, did you want to come up and address any stop sign issues? So we've talked about it a lot. So just give me some clarity.
Good evening. So I can talk on some of the stuff that came up on stop signs. Installation of a stop sign is not determined by LOS level. It is determined by volume of vehicles on the road. And there are a few different criteria. One of them is volume, other one is peak hour volume, other one is 8-hour peak volume, and collision history at that location. So currently, the volume on the Foster Avenue in front of the project is in the range of 1,000 vehicles per day in 24-hour period. And with project, there might be addition of 1,000 more in a day. So that does not warrant stop sign on Foster. However, it does, as a part of the project entrance would have stop sign when they are coming onto Foster Avenue. And the intersection of James Road and Foster, it's in the county, and we will be working with them if there's a potential for installing a stop sign there.
So what we have on Janes and Foster right now is a stop sign that stops Janes from
Yes.
running into Foster, because
Yes.
Foster's the throughway.
Yes.
On Foster and Q, there currently is no stop sign, correct?
On
the
Q?
Foster curve there, where Q turns right at Sean's house.
Currently, there's no Foster. There's no stop sign, yes.
There's no traffic control there at all.
Right now, there's only curve, yes.
But we are adding some traffic control there.
As a part of the project, we are installing, or we are proposing to install stop sign on Q Street going to Foster. That is correct.
So Q can't just whip around the curve
Yes.
like it does now.
No.
It'll have to stop.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else you wanted to add onto this?
No, that's all I have.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks.
So my questions are answered. Council members? Anything? Okay. Motion.
Yeah, if there's no further discussion, I'll make a very long motion. And staff, I tried to make notes of some of the corrections, but feel free to step in if I misspoke. Okay. So I make a motion to adopt resolutions number 190-37, 190-44, 190-39, 190-45, and the action of the City Council. Introduce ordinance number 1523, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata pre-zoning the Creekside Homes annexation properties. Waive reading of the text and consent to read by title only. And I'm skipping the fourth one since the development agreement is still being worked on. And then move to continue this item to the February 19th, 2020 regularly scheduled City Council meeting to adopt ordinance number 1523 and adopt ordinance number 1523 on the consent calendar and introduce ordinance number 1524.
Is that right?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that the development agreement we're only just talking about specific words and details,
Yes.
and it has not changed from the term sheet that you've reviewed.
Sure.
Because you are actually making findings that
Yes.
the development agreement is consistent with the general plan. So I want to point out that you can make those findings. All we're doing is getting down to the details.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarification.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion, Council? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No?
Motion carries.
We got 3 ayes.
Right. Next on the agenda under new business is a presentation by Ben McWhorter, manager of Sequoia Gas, on propane infrastructure in a renewable future.
Good evening. Thank you, council members and mayor. Appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. And I'll give a few seconds here to pull up a PowerPoint presentation. Perfect, good job. My name's Ben McWhorter, and I'm with Sequoia Gas Company. 3 generations of a family-ran propane business in Humboldt County. And I'm here tonight to talk to you a little bit about some regulations that are going on within the state of California and potential banning of natural gas and propane within the city of Arcata. In Section 10, you can go to the next page, please. In Section 10, 106 of the Building Energy Efficiency Standards, it establishes a process which allows local adoption of energy standards that are more stringent than the statewide standards. Thus, the City of Arcata can adopt and enforce energy standards for newly constructed buildings, additions, alterations, and repairs to existing buildings, provided the Energy Commission finds that the standards will require buildings to be designed to consume no more energy than permitted by Title 24. The city is required to apply to the Energy Commission for approval, documenting the supporting analysis for how the local government has determined that their proposed standards will save more energy than the current statewide standards, and the basis of the local government's determination will be cost effective for those people using it. A little background in propane. There's more than 60 million Americans use propane for everything from heating to cooling, to running their home and businesses, to powering their barbecue grills. And that's what you see a lot in cities, is most people, they use it for barbecuing. About 315,000 people approximately in California households use propane as their primary heating source. 220 million estimated number of gallons that Californians use each year in California. It's clean, it's reliable, and it's an efficient energy source that's readily available. Some uses that we have for propane in the home: we have furnaces, hot water heaters that are up to 30% cheaper to run than electric, generators. We're seeing lots of generators put in for backup power. People are really concerned about losing power with the power shutoff, so we're seeing lots of generators. fireplaces, ovens, cooking, stoves, ranges, and dryers are used throughout a home using propane. Affordability, go to the next page there. It provides a low-cost, clean energy source to rural communities. California Regulatory Agency electricity pricing forecasts does not factor in the fragile network of California's electric grid and other infrastructure and liability costs that will ultimately be the responsibility of ratepayers. In late 2018, California Public Utilities Commission granted PG&E the ability to increase rates 23% over the next 3 years. Propane can provide clean, uninterrupted energy at a cheaper rate than electricity. Well, what's our propane usage in Arcata? It's extremely small, very small. As a matter of fact, we probably only have about 30 customers in the whole city of Arcata. Your usage is natural gas. Residential usage, minimal. More and more residential and commercial are putting in backup generators, not only in Arcata, but throughout the county, and all the cities in our county are using them. We're seeing generators placed at schools, hospitals, fire and police departments, cell towers, anything that needs power and can't go without. A lot of businesses as well. The largest propane consumer in Arcata is actually Wing Inflatables, a big business right here in Arcata that couldn't tie into the natural gas lines and use propane for their heating source. And also in their production process, they have an oven that they use propane that's actually a part of building for their boats in that manufacturing process. I talked to them the other day, and I asked them about it and what they thought about, the potential for banning natural gas and propane in the city of Arcata. And they said it's what propane provides for them. It's paramount to their business and their production process. We have a couple restaurants that couldn't access natural gas and they needed cooking gas. They use propane. Couldn't tie into the PG&E lines. We have a coffee roaster as well, and I believe Arcata has a pretty large cannabis zoning area, and we're seeing cannabis business using propane for extraction, greenhouse heating, soil bed warming, and hot water sterilization. Looking to the future is it breaks down the cost effectiveness with these high demands, and how will the price of propane and natural gas stack up to electricity? California, as some of you know, and a lot of people don't know, that California has aggressive 100% renewable energy by the year 2045. There's currently 27 other states mandating that a percentage or all of their electricity consumed comes from renewable sources. Nuclear power is not one of them, and that will be coming offline. Our biggest one in California is Diablo Canyon. It can power up to 3 million homes and is about 10% of PG&E's total energy portfolio. Right now, there's been about 13 cities have passed bans on natural gas and propane within the city, and there's quite a few other ones that are looking at it, but there's also a lot of them that have signed a coalition to not ban it. San Luis Obispo is one that passed a process of not using natural gas, but they are going to keep propane there in that city limits of San Luis Obispo. We're seeing renewable energy projects hitting roadblocks. It's harder and harder to get renewable energy. For the year 2045, we know that by the Terragen project right here in Humboldt County. We have a strong goal in California of 5 million electric vehicles. That's more power that we're going to have to need and require to power all these vehicles. There's lots of tax incentives and rebates to influence new construction and remodels to go electric. We're seeing developers and builders getting kickbacks from utility companies to go all electric. So we definitely will see a lot more homes and buildings going electric, along with the need for powering those cars that pull in the driveways. As a new energy policy and reform takes place, what taxes and fees will be associated with electric rates to ratepayers? We're already seeing different rates increase because of fees associated with them. And who knows what those taxes and fees will be in the future to help offset that. Cost effectiveness for emissions on reductions. The California Energy Commission recently came out and said that propane accounts for about 0.06 of the total state's greenhouse gas emissions. And they advised that the onus is on each city to demonstrate the cost effectiveness. Cities cannot simply rely on a general statewide report, and the CEC appears primarily focused on other fuels and kind of carelessly included propane in this, but it is a gas and is used, and here we are today. The one thing the CEC does not account for is energy resiliency and the ability to have that power and ability on hand, on site, ready to go whenever you need it. Propane versus electricity. Propane can outcompete, along with natural gas, electricity significantly when it comes to cost savings. For the amount of BTUs that you get out of a gallon of propane and the amount of BTUs equivalent to that, it'd be about $8 a gallon for the power when you can buy propane for about $2.50, and natural gas would be even less, probably in the dollar range. So it's hard to compete with some of those when it comes down to cost effectiveness. Next. The resiliency, I talked about propane provides a fundamental backup for power for those critical first responders and a lot of different things that we need propane for when the power does go out. Their projected power shutoffs for 5, maybe 10 years, we don't really know, but the potential is there for many more power shutoffs. We've seen a big increase, like I said, with propane powered generators. Everything from nursing homes to people that have medical needs and they can't go without that power. And that goes, there's several of them here in Arcata within the city itself. Solar homes, we're seeing a lot of solar homes, a lot of advantages to the solar homes, but we're also seeing a lot of backup power propane systems put into solar homes so that they can generate that energy when they need it when there's no sunshine. There's been lots of findings, and there's lots of information out there, and there's lots of different directions to go, but there's a lot of people that also say a number of analyses and meta-analysis and assessments, including those from different panels from climate change to National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They all agree that we need more feasible and less costly pathways for low carbon emission energy systems. And propane and natural gas has provided that for us here locally. In conclusion, I think Arcata residents, they deserve an access to diverse energy portfolio. I think they should be able to choose the energy choices that they would like and that they can really afford. Propane, it's clean, it's reliable, and it's affordable. And it's also a non-methane gas, which natural gas is. Propane can provide uninterrupted energy at a cheaper rate than electricity and can serve as a primary fuel or complement to solar and other things. I'd really like to thank you for the time and opportunity to present this here tonight. I know there'll be a lot of other people that have some input about the energy direction for the city of Arcata as we look forward to the future of California and where we go. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. So are there any questions or comments from?
I just wanted to say thanks for pointing out that not too many people in Arcata use propane at their homes.
No, not too many.
I had that question sitting here, but you answered it, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, I have some. Do you have any comments? Well, I work in the energy field and have for the last 20 years, and propane is actually something that I've studied a lot, and so I know I'm very well aware of the differences between propane and natural gas. That, for one thing, that if you include the leaks from natural gas from extraction to delivery, that the global warming impact of natural gas is roughly double. Per unit of delivered energy, the global warming impact of natural gas is roughly double what it is of propane. I don't know if that's something that you're aware of, and that makes a very big difference. And The other thing is that in terms of what you said about the cost, I don't agree with those that I use electric heat pumps in my own home, that I've worked on hundreds of projects that use electric heat pumps. And although it's true if somebody used electric resistance heating, it would be more expensive than natural gas or propane. If somebody uses a high efficiency electric heat pump, that is no longer the case, and it can actually be less expensive very definitely less expensive than propane, and roughly comparable to the cost of natural gas. But I agree that in terms of resiliency, that propane can play an important role. That my long-term goal, and it was when the council adopted related goals a year ago, was to phase out the use of natural gas, not to phase out the use of propane. Okay. And so I think that we need to treat these two fuels very differently.
Right. Thank you.
And so I think that what I would like to see is a phase out of natural gas for space heating and water heating, and for people who prefer cooking with a gaseous fuel, I really see no objection to them using propane. And one thing I'm interested in is whether it's feasible and cost effective to convert an existing gas stove to operating on propane.
Right. It is cost effective to do that. I would say, what's a kilowatt an hour? It's about 30 cents PG&E kilowatt hour right now, roughly.
Well, let's see. I'm paying about 22 cents per kilowatt hour.
20 watt hour. I think what we're looking at is the future. And if you build every building has to be electric and no plumbing for gas at all, then it's going to be electric, and it doesn't really have a choice to be anything but in that building electric. And what's the electric prices going to be in the future? You and I don't necessarily know that, but if we look at everything having to become renewable in this world, in a competitive market where everybody is jumping on board, other states are doing it, Oregon, Washington, tremendous amounts of renewable energy is going to have to come on board in the future. And what is that rate going to be to that person that consumes that power? That's an answer that we don't really know, but it's a simple supply and demand. Demand will go up, all the cars, all the houses, and where's the supply going to come from when we shut down power plants that run off natural gas? It's all got to be renewable, windmills, solar, or hydro. So I think that's a concern, and it should be a concern for people that live here, as what's the price going to be in the future if my house is electric?
So I see an important complementary role of propane to renewable energy, as you pointed out, and I don't see that for natural gas. So I think that, and also I don't know if you're aware, is that there has been some development of biopropane.
Yes, I have. A renewable,
Yeah,
they call it, yeah.
If that's something that your company is looking into as making available in this area.
Yeah. They've looked at it, and we've met with the CEC and talked to them about the renewable propane option to implement that in the future as well. It's just a hard product to get. There's not a lot of it out there, and we're doing our best to try and uptick that supply so it can be offered to California.
So anyway, in my ideal future, I actually see a role for propane in Arcata and growth of use of propane within Arcata, and having it as an important complement especially for people who choose to use a gaseous fuel for cooking,
right?
Or in commercial restaurants, right, or in individual homes. So my target is more off of natural gas, and that rather than going after or being hostile to propane. And as I said before, there's a very big difference in climate change impact of propane and natural gas.
Right. Thank you.
So,
if I may, just a process question, just because I recognize we have a presentation and this is not something agendized in a way for us to have a in-depth policy conversation around. In terms of the natural gas policy that is being discussed, it's my understanding that it's at the Energy Committee level. It seems like that information should go to the Energy Committee in terms of being really at that relevant stage. And so then my follow-up question in terms of process is how this came to be on the agenda this night for this presentation, given that the Energy Committee is the one that's actually having that discussion around the natural gas.
Well, could you comment on that then?
The item was requested by Councilmember Ornelas.
Thank you.
I had an opportunity to sit and talk to Councilmember Ornelas, and she thought it would be a good idea to give a presentation to the council and really to the community, because they're watching, to give thoughts and let them be aware that that's out there.
I'd like to say that I agree with you, and it'd be great if you gave this presentation to Energy Committee.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you.
So would it be appropriate to have public comment on this item? All right. So I'm going to open this to public comment. So if any member of the public would like to comment on this item, please come forward.
So I appreciate, Sophia, you asking that question, because it seems a little out of place, and I wonder how it works, that if anybody can bring a proposal to share with the council / the community, that would be good to know. I hope that y'all were really good. Most of y'all were really good about like hiding your reactions to this, because this seems really silly to me, since we're trying to move towards eliminating fossil fuels, and there is a reason why cities are starting to try and ban both natural gas and propane. It's definitely neither of those are renewable energy, so I think it's pretty crazy to be able to call it that. I mean, this is green capitalism. This is what it is that we're being sold in politics, is that we need to choose the lesser of the evil, and I don't support that. I think that we need to do what it is that we know is right, which is making choices that are actually renewable, that are actually sustainable, and that are the best for us and our environment. So is it okay that we're all reliant on electricity? I think that's fine, but that means that we have to invest into more alternative ways to supply that energy. That is a whole nother conversation about, why aren't we talking about how we as the public take over our utilities and make them actually applicable to us, because then we can design them to be exactly what it is that we want. So I really hope that conversation is happening behind the scenes too. And again, let's not sell out and do something that we see as supposedly a little bit less evil than what it is that's already in place. And let's just go for what we know is right, and we will work around how to adapt to it. We can figure it out. So, thanks.
Right. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to comment on this item? All right. Seeing none, I will close public comment. Any other final comments by the council? Right. Thank you. And next new business item is consider introducing ordinance number 1528, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata, designating the Chapman House as a local historic landmark. Could I have a staff report, please?
Thanks. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Dilo Freitas. I'm the assigned planner on this project. I will present, and the applicant is also here to answer any questions that you may have, as well as the director. So this project is for the designation of the Chapman House as a locally listed historic landmark at 974 10th Street. The project applicants are Scott and Sandra Hunt. They are here in the audience tonight, as well as their agents. So the recommendation from staff is to introduce ordinance 1528 and continue the hearing to February 19th for the adoption of the local landmark designation and associated historic landmark overlay zone. So the staff report, really quick to run you through this, begins on page 181. The ordinance is on 189, and the last attachment is on page 215, which is the submitted public comment. We received one public comment on this item in support of the designation. So again, the site is on 10th Street. It is right at the cusp of the residential low density and the central commercial zone. And the pictures kind of speak for themselves, so I wanted to run you through a few of these. This is taken just 2 years ago in front of the property, and here's the side of the property, and this is what the property looks like today. So the applicants acquired the property relatively recently, and they immediately began work on the property. They hired 2 local consultants to assist them with the rehabilitation of the structure and followed the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation as closely as they could, which mostly meant they attempted to repair everything that they could and replace in kind only when they had to. They also reconstructed certain elements of the structure that had been removed in the course of history. They also created accessibility to the site and repaired the sidewalk directly adjacent to the site. So the justification for listing locally, even though it's the last bullet item here, maybe the most important one is that it's already listed on the National Register for Historic Places. The Historic Landmarks Committee and the Planning Commission also heard this item and recommended approval. It really is a truly exemplary specimen of Italianate architecture, all made with local redwood, and has really maintained its architectural integrity. It's also associated with John G. Chapman, who was an original owner of the Jacoby Storehouse. So the requested incentives are 3 fee waivers, a Mills Act agreement, as well as expanded allowed uses at the site, which is a particular incentive granted for adaptive reuse to structures that have the HL combining zone. We also are suggesting a parking waiver that would accompany the expanded uses to basically ensure that the site retains its character. So the requested fee waiver is capped in the ordinance at $8,000. The fees that have been suggested to waive are mostly all building permit fees and total less than 1% of total project costs to date. No enterprise fees are included in this amount, which would otherwise total closer to $15,000. The expansion of allowed uses, just for some background, is something that has been done with a couple of previous projects as well. The Daggett property and the Peace Trust property, I believe late last year, also received some expansion of allowed uses. These are the requested uses from the applicants, and you can see that the site is directly adjacent to the central commercial zone, and so when we were doing our analysis, we attempted to kind of align uses with uses that are principally permitted in the commercial zone, as you can see in this chart. So just a couple things to quickly bring your attention to. Mostly, if it was principally permitted in the commercial zone, we just had that be kind of the allowed use for this site. With the exception of the restaurant, cafe, and coffee shop use, staff had originally recommended a minor use permit. That use is principally permitted in the commercial zone, but we kind of wanted to strike a balance there. And the Planning Commission requested a full use permit, so that's something for the council to deliberate what they think is most appropriate. And also, we just wanted to clarify that for the allowing of multifamily housing, it's only for up to 3 units as requested by the applicant. So finally, the Mills Act is a program that was brought up by the mayor this evening. The intent of the program is to incentivize rehabilitation and preservation of historic resources. As you can see, the project has already undertaken a lot of work to make sure that the resource will continue to be used into the future. And we have worked with the assessor and are estimating that over a 10-year period, the applicant would receive a $50,000 tax savings. So that would be roughly $60,000 in terms of a monetary incentive that the council would grant. So that is the overview of the project, and we are available for any questions that you may have.
Councilmember Ferrer?
I just wanted to add a couple of quick things. One is that in regards to the Mills Act agreement, typically we enter a 10-year agreement. The applicant agrees to do things over 10 years. We agree to cut them a tax break over that 10-year period. In this case, we're getting everything we're asking for up front. They've already done all of the work. They've already invested all of the energy into it. So I just want you to keep that in mind. And they've done a fantastic job in most people's opinion. I also wanted to add into the ordinance, if you turn to your packet page 195, we had a lesson learned on the Peace House project recently, as you recall, where they were coming in to request a slight modification in the use The ordinance was very specific about the type of use that was allowed in the Peace House, and the new proposed use was not specifically that, but very similar in kind, and they had to go through the entire zone amendment to be able to do that additional use. And so we took them to the Planning Commission, we went to the City Council. Ultimately, we amended their ordinance to allow that use and other similar compatible uses. Unfortunately, we didn't catch that when we prepared this ordinance. So what I'd like to propose is under this subsection 2 in Exhibit 2, where it provides for the various uses, under that first subparagraph A, we would add a bullet number 9 that reads, other similar and/or compatible uses as determined by the Community Development Director. And this would allow for that same sort of flexibility that we asked for in the Peace House. Any of the uses that would require a use permit are still specified and don't have that same allowance for the director to determine that they're similar uses. They haven't asked for any additional uses at this point either. And so that would still require a process if you made this one amendment.
I'm a little bit confused about that. So you're saying number 9 would be what?
Other similar and/or compatible uses as determined by the Community Development Director. So that first list is principally permitted uses. If they decide, hey, we want to do vacation rentals, knock yourself out, go for it, we're saying. Medical services, a doctor's office, these are all traditionally uses that are associated with historic preservation that we allow uses that aren't traditionally allowed for. And so all I'm saying is that there may be a use that isn't explicitly listed here, but it's very similar to a use that's listed here under these principally permitted uses. So I'm asking you to authorize me or my successor to make a decision that, yes, this is a similar and compatible use, instead of having them go through an ordinance revision to come back and get authorization to do that similar and compatible use. It would be done as a zoning administrator, like a zoning clearance type decision.
And so you'll continue to condition bar, tavern, pub, restaurant, cafe, coffee shop, they'll still have to go get a permit for that?
Correct.
A use permit?
Use permit through the Planning Commission, issued through the Planning Commission. And the one caveat to that is the restaurant, cafe, coffee shop, if you decide to deliberate and make that something less, a lower permit threshold than a use permit.
You're saying for restaurant, cafe, coffee shop?
Correct.
Minor use permit instead of a use permit?
Minor use permit or principally permitted. In the zone immediately adjacent, in the central commercial zone, it's principally permitted.
Right.
Bars, pub, tavern, use permit no matter where you are in the city. And we recommend that you maintain that same level of discretionary review.
Thank you.
I'm fine with listing additional explicit uses. I'm really not comfortable with the number 9 option of just giving staff, the broad authority, and that would change from director to director.
Yeah, I only suggest it because that was the decision on the Peace House.
So you see it as giving too much authority and discretion to staff?
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason of having uses, right, is to make sure it's compatible with the neighborhood. I don't know. Yeah, I just, that's not something I'm typically comfortable with. I'm happy with those things coming back to the council.
So if an applicant wanted to do it, let's say we did not add this and the applicant wanted to have a use that's not listed, what would be the process then?
It would be the same as a zone amendment. You're adopting a zoning ordinance that establishes an overlay zone, a combining zone onto the property. And so they would have to go through the Planning Commission for a recommendation to the City Council. The City Council would hold hearings and introduce an ordinance and then adopt it ultimately. The types of uses that we're talking about too, I just want to be clear, are all of the uses under bullets 1 through 8 are principally permitted uses in that zone. And we wouldn't be proposing to extend that determination to uses that would otherwise require some sort of a discretionary permit. They would be for principally permitted uses. The zoning administrator already has the authority under the land use code to interpret uses that aren't explicitly listed and to determine whether or not they are similar and compatible to other uses for other zoning districts. So this would just be encompassing or incorporating that same level of discretion as at the zoning administrative level. So. And I can point you to the code section if you're interested.
And we could change that too, right?
What's that?
You know, all the authority that's been given to the zoning administrator.
Certainly, yeah. The council establishes the authority given to the zoning administrator, and you can giveth and you can taketh away.
I just want to weigh in on that. I don't have the same aversion to that, recognizing that, there are times where we put something in statute, and if it literally outlines, certain language, then we don't have the flexibility and now have to go through an onerous process to rectify it, when there could be something done at a staff level of just something reasonable that's compatible, making that determination. Our staff are working on behalf of the city council in the direction of the city council. So that's something I'm fine with incorporating. Obviously, I may have disagreement with my colleagues here. I think really the question around the restaurants and bar, and I think that's maybe something that we should sort out. And then I think if there's another potential use that we are very concerned about, there's nothing that comes to mind for me, but if there's something that we feel that we would not want a determination to be made at a zoning administrator level, then perhaps that's what we can entertain for that portion. But I just wanted to.
Yeah, I understood it. Excuse me. I understood Dave to say that bar, pub, tavern would have to get a use permit.
Exactly.
Right.
So
But the restaurant, cafe, coffee shop.
yes. Yeah, and what I'm saying, though, is that given that's a separate thing where it has to have a use permit,
Right.
if there's concern about the zoning administrator making a determination for some other compatible use with this previous list, we could also include a use permit to go along with the bar, the restaurant, the cafe. And I'm just saying that if there was a concern that the zoning administrator would, make an interpretation that we think we wouldn't agree with, we could put it in that same category as the bars and the restaurants. I can't.
Right, I can't think of
anticipate
anything
something,
either.
But I'm just saying that also could be an alternative.
Okay.
Well, I agree with Councilmember Watson that I would not like to give the zoning administrator that authority. It's more open-ended than I would be comfortable with. So other comments from council before I open it up to public comment?
No, public.
All right, I'm going to open this to public comments. So if any member of the public would like to comment on this item, please come forward.
Did you want to go first? I talked a lot. You were before me. I've talked a lot, so I was trying to let someone else go. So I have been really uncomfortable by this process happening before, just because it is extremely subjective and also reaffirms our colonist priorities, that we see this building as historic and worth protecting and worth $60,000. Yet we don't put any energy towards protecting the forest and the environment that is keeping us alive. This house was, I don't remember whether you said it was built by the people who were the Jacoby Storehouse or if it was the people who owned, but anyways, if it has any affiliation with the Jacoby Storehouse, that was the site where they sold indigenous children. And so that's the framework that we're protecting right now. We have no hesitation to put our time and money into protecting these one specific parts of we as white people and European colonists' history. Yet we don't provide anything. What are we doing for the Wiyot tribe and trying to protect their land? How are we doing that? So this makes me really uncomfortable. And it's beyond just this one specific instance. I know that this has happened many times and happens very often here. But this is just an example of how we're repeating the same history. We're supporting the people who are in power, the people who came and colonized this land, who still remain in power, the ones who can afford to have those houses, the ones who can go through this process, hire an attorney to do this. So I hope you guys think about this a lot before you do this. And I also really like that you two don't want to give more power to another entity, because they all have different, it's very subjective what it is that's historical and what it is that's like reasonable in this. You could find something reasonable that I definitely do not find reasonable. I'm sure that happens often. So I definitely support that decision, but I hope you guys take it farther and really hesitate before you just go to protect something that's the history of only some people in this community. Thanks.
Thank you.
Is that yours? Oh, okay. Hello, Alex Stillman. So I was thinking about the comment that was made that your community development director made and the concerns. And one of the things with historic structures is part of our built environment, and it makes us, with that built environment, it helps create a community that isn't like anywhere else in America. And that would be when you start to look at you start to look like Valley West, the big shopping centers and so forth, and how many communities have lost their sense of community. And so I think it's really important for us to always think about how we can protect the built environment. It's here. And if Maggie Gaynor is sitting here and she knows how expensive it is to tear up a building down and put it into the dump, and we don't want that to happen. And I think unless you are worried about a brothel and that maybe David would approve one, I don't see any reason for the community development director not to be able to look at what is a possibility for it, and not to put a property owner with a historic structure, which they're trying to maintain and keep up, through the process of the expense of going through planning commission. Well, you start with staff, planning commission, and council. So I favor it. I think it's important for us we have the built environment. We need to continue to protect it. And that's just one of the things that makes Arcata unique, is that we have built environment that it's a history. Whatever happened in the past, we've got it currently, and a lot of the buildings are in the 1800s. So thank you.
Thank you. So if anyone else would like to make a comment on this, please come forward.
I have a question.
Yes.
David, when I look at that list there, that multifamily housing up to 3 units, what's that on there for again?
Right now, the proposal, the operations that they want to run is a vacation rental.
Right.
The way that the structure has been rehabilitated right now, there are 2 separate compartmentalized units in the main house, and they're building a detached bedroom, or a third unit, if you will, above the garage. That'll be a new build, and so the current use is going to be for vacation rental, but if they choose to in the future rent those out as long-term rentals,
sure,
then what we're saying here is that they can do that by right, principally permitted, just like they could in the adjacent zone.
Thanks.
Right. So once again, if any member of the public would like to speak on this item, please come forward.
Good evening. I'm Scott Hunt. My wife Sandy. This was our baby. We decided to save it, and I want to really appreciate all the work that Dilo and David and other members of staff have done to put this together for us. We did not do this project to put in another vacation rental in Arcata. We did this project because somebody needed to save this house from a long time ago. And we felt, as we went through the process, that the house itself could be even best used as a museum in some ways, because that's the way we renovated it, and we felt that the only way that people, a broad spectrum of people, could enjoy that property would be through the use as a vacation rental. And so really it came down to how do we expose this beautiful piece of property that shows the history in a period of time in our history that we wanted to share that with people, and that's why we did what we did. It's I hear the comment about 50,000, and I get it. It's over a 10-year period of time. The cost of putting a project like this together is so far and above what it would cost to build it new or anything else. And so to the extent that there are incentives out there that can help others do that, and in our process of navigating through this, if we in some way can help others to preserve pieces of it by working with staff, working with the city to line that out and help preserve that, I think it's going to help us in the long run in this community. So anyway, again, thank you for your help, and I appreciate your consideration on this.
Right, thank you. So if any other member of the public would like to come in, please come forward.
Hi, my name's Emily. So we are having a housing crisis in this area, and this is a pretty big lot. We just approved a housing development in an area that is really close to a floodplain. And right now we are redoing a smaller house. And if we are gonna, it should be for low income, it should be going to people who really need it and not a vacation home. There are a lot of students sleeping in their cars. If there's any way we can turn this into for something for the students, something for low income. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. So if any other member of the public would like to comment on this item, please come forward. Seeing none, I will close public comment and turn it back to council.
I'm going to try to make a motion here.
Okay. Do you mind if I just address the one comment about the systemic racism that's associated with our historic resources program? I do just wanted to draw your attention to the fact that, the city is very sensitive to these issues and has been working with its Equity Arcata program for a number of years. And the Historic Landmarks Committee in particular has been very tuned into this issue. And I just wanted to point out to you that two of the goals, the 2020 goals for the Historic Landmarks Committee, is to coordinate with tribal historic preservation officers to share information and better understand and honor Arcata's pre-settlement history, and to expand inclusivity, incorporating racial equity, recognizing pre-settlement history and culture as important to Arcata's history. And so I think it's really poignant to point out that, the Historic Resources Preservation Program has really focused on a narrow band of Arcata's history historically, but it's important also to note that we're doing something to try and change that in the future.
Thank you. I got that from his presentation earlier. Thanks. So I'm going to try to make a motion here. So I move to introduce ordinance number 1528, ordinance of the City Council, City of Arcata, designating Chapman House an historic landmark, waive reading of the text and consent to read by title only, and continue hearing to February 19th, 2020 for adoption of ordinance number 1528. This is to include item, that bullet point number 9, compatible uses.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. All right. So we are going to take a 5-minute break. So I'm going to resume this meeting of the Arcata City Council.
Karen's gonna do it. You got it?
You got it?
She'll come. She'll figure it out eventually. Yeah.
Do we have staff that we need?
She's gone. She's coming. There we go.
Oh, we're good?
Yeah.
All right. So next is item C, consideration of a city-initiated ballot measure for the November 2020 general election to ask voters if the city should discontinue adding fluoride to the city's water systems. Could I have a staff report, please?
Mayor and council, we're going to move on to the item on fluoride. The item before you tonight is a request. Could we?
Could people please hold it down so that we can go on to the item on water fluoridation?
All right. So the city of Arcata began fluoridating our drinking water system with the intent of improving overall public health through ordinance number 429 in 1956. The city continued to fluoridate water continuously until today. But there was, in 2006, a ballot initiative, a citizen ballot initiative that came forward that would have, in essence, it was a bit complicated in its wording, but it would have had the effect to stop fluoridation in 2006. That ballot measure did fail by a vote basically of 3-2 in 2006, and so the city does continue to fluoridate water today. This item has come before you at the request of Councilmember Patino. And the request is to consider a ballot measure for the November 2020 election. I do want the council and just for the community to be clear that this is added by ordinance. The city does retain that authority. At this point, the vote in 2006, although certainly I think has been used as a poll by past councils on this item, was not binding for future decisions of the council. I can certainly try to answer questions. The staff has not delved into the science of this issue, as that it was pretty heavily debated in the past. There is quite a bit on the record, and I think many people to speak to you tonight. If there are specific areas that you would like us to research, would be happy to do so after tonight's discussion.
All right. Since you, Council Vice Mayor Patino, since you asked for this item to be introduced, could you explain your thinking?
Well, that might take a couple of days, but I'm not going to try to explain everything about fluoride or the addition of fluoride or the good or bad of it, because if you have any kind of connection to the internet, if you will look at the various sources that are available, the two of them that I found the most informative were the NYSCOF, that's New York State Coalition Opposed to Fluoridation. And they list all the recent studies up to and including 2019 studies that look at fluoride as a problem because of its neurotoxicity. Okay? They're not saying it doesn't help young kids get harder teeth. What they're saying is it gives us a neurotoxin that lowers IQ in children. They're studies. They're studies, and they're as valid as any other study. So one of the things that when we look at a study, we say, oh, that study's not, it doesn't go with what I believe, so it wasn't any good, except that's not the way studies are done. They're scientific, and if you're going to believe it was a study, then it's as valid as the next. So I'm not here to debate whether it helps young kids' teeth or not. That there are studies that show one way or another on that. The neurotoxicity, the lowering of IQ to young children by receiving fluoridated water, and then, of course, if you're brushing your teeth with fluoride toothpaste, now you're adding on top of what you're already ingesting. I would say most experts agree the best way to provide fluoride treatment to teeth is directly topically, not ingesting it. For example, 1970, Sweden banned fluoride, and they have found nothing different to say that they should bring it back. And if you look at the numbers for European countries, for people around the world, the U.S. stands out as being somebody that fluoridates most of our water systems. And you know, just because we do it doesn't mean it's right, okay? So I would say, for me, adding fluoride to our water system is dubious, and the first rule that I understand is do no harm. First rule, do no harm. So if with all the new studies that we have up to November 2019, if you consider all that data and then look at the Center for Disease Control that is giving you data that does not include that, it's an old story that this is one of the 10 best things that the public health has done in the U.S. And this is the 75th anniversary of fluoride. If you look at all that, that's one side. But then you look at all the studies and you say, uh-oh, you know what? There's too much here for me to say, go ahead and do it. So in my mind, I would not fluoridate. And when we did the ballot proposal in 2006, most of these studies had not been done yet. So the most recent studies are the ones that tell you, if you're pregnant, do not drink fluoridated water because it'll affect the IQ of your baby. Be careful. So one thing when we're thinking about when we fluoridate all our water, everything that comes out of the pipe, who gets it besides the people that drink it? Our environment, the bay, all the animals. You know, it just does not seem wise to me when you have an option of topically applying fluoride to your teeth. So this is just a general statement from me. I think I have a bunch of notes, but I don't want to bore you with them all. If you will, another thing to Google, if you have any connection to the internet, you might look at a case against fluoride. Here's a book. Somebody drove to my house and said, you better look at this. Have you read it? And I said, no, I haven't. Ralph Nader endorsed it. I like Ralph Nader. He's a consumer advocate. And I don't think he'd put his name on something that wasn't valuable. There's another fluoride internet connection that you might want to look at. It's called the Fluoride Action Network, fluoridealert.org. Very quick, few-page item to list the studies and tell you what the problems are. I feel that the council putting it as a ballot measure starts the conversation. I think that in order for the conversation to be expanded and for all of us to be educated on all these studies and have to look at them and say, oh yeah, that really happened, we probably should hold a town hall meeting with experts give us the information. We didn't have that option last time. All we had was the system, the people in the mainstream in the system that believe in it, drowning out people like me that didn't want it. That's not the way things are today. The internet has changed it radically. You can't hide. If there's a study done and it looks valid, you have to admit it looks valid. So, not to beleaguer this, but I think that other council members have something to say, and then maybe we hear from the public, and then we can vote on it.
Well, for me, the most important thing is that we had a vote in 2006, and at that time, that represented the will of the citizens of Arcata, and so I think it's important to honor that. But as Vice Mayor Patino said, that new information has come along, and different people live here in Arcata. So, but I think that in honoring that vote from 2006, when Council Member Patino brought this up, I suggested that we put this on the ballot, and also have a vigorous public debate, and I think that having a town hall meeting would be very appropriate. So I support putting this on the ballot, and once again, respecting the citizens and honoring the original vote, but giving the citizens who live in Arcata now their right to make a decision on this important issue.
Thank you. And reminding the public that was 14 years ago. A lot of data's come out in that time. So if the arguments to put fluoride in the water are the same 2006 arguments, I would like people to really look at what's changed. And what's changed is people not just believing the mainstream or the government, so to speak. Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to open this to public comment and allow 3 minutes per person. So if anyone would like to speak on this item, please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Michael Beluscio. I am a general dentist in Fortuna, and I am president of Humboldt Del Norte Dental Society. And my main purpose here was this kind of raised a red flag, and because of that and what is new, we invited some experts from UC San Francisco, which is my alma mater, and hopefully to help answer some of your questions. Because everything that was talked about why we support fluoridation is still valid, and it's very cost effective. But after your presentation, it really alerted me to the fact that there is so much stuff that is new, and it really is helpful to have the experts. And the experts from UC San Francisco are up to date on the real science and can hopefully address any issues that we may have. So thank you. Thank you for hearing.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bruce LaBelle. I've lived in Arcata for 30 years, raised my family here, have started 5 businesses in Arcata, from nonprofit charity to manufacturing, arts and services to software. I support the ballot proposal. Currently, the city's medicating all of the residents who drink city water. I disagree with the concept of the city adding a substance to the water supply, not for the safety of the water supply itself, but for the purpose of medicating the population. I have a series of points here. The staff report section on the budget and fiscal impact neglected to include the $40,000 cost for replacing the fluoridation feed system that, per city documents that I received in May 2019, is an upcoming requirement that could be avoided if this ballot measure passes. So that $40,000 should certainly be included in the fiscal and budget impact analysis. The thing to me about fluoridation that may seem nominal to many, but to to me merits serious due diligence is the arsenic issue. Arsenic is the most common contaminant in the fluoride materials that are put into our water supply. There are maximum contaminant levels and maximum contaminant level goals. And if you just look at the federal MCLGs and MCLs, which are looser than the state, the maximum contaminant level goal for arsenic in drinking water is 0. Other materials with 0 MCLGs are lead, dioxin. Even cyanide has a non-zero MCLG. So it's a serious chemical, proven human carcinogen. The maximum contaminant level goal is 1 part per billion. The National Sanitation Federation that does testing on the fluoridation materials that are used in water supplies around the nations, sample testing, regularly finds lots of materials that exceed that maximum contaminant level by 50%. So there are materials that are being put into the water supplies that, when they're diluted through the feed systems, exceed the maximum contaminant levels by 50%. The city does not report arsenic in the drinking water because the city has never had the testing equipment or the testing methods for being able to capture it. It's like trying to capture and count butterflies with a hula hoop that doesn't have a net on it. I have suggested ways of testing, and those have been rejected because Environmental Services says, well, they're not specifically for drinking water testing. So the city doesn't really know what the arsenic is in our drinking water. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cynthia Stewart, and thank you so much for bringing this up for dialogue again. I was a professor of analytical writing and research, so I have some research skills. And I wanted to ask you, first and foremost, that if you bring it up on the ballot again, make it so that the people who use your water can vote on it, because we out in Bayside had no power when the vote came out last time, and we use your water all the time. So I used to whiten my teeth, I fluoridated, I nursed my son. We lived on Union Street here in Arcata. I knew nothing about the fluoride issue. This was 20 years ago, until he went to a dentist at age 6 and he had fluoridosis, mottled teeth, like a fluoride poisoning, and that got my research skills kicked into gear. And here's what I learned about fluoride. There's a difference between calcium fluoride and sodium monofluorophosphate, which is used in toothpaste and in fluoridate. The sodium phosphate is used in our water fluoridation system. Calcium fluoride was the level of fluoride that was used originally in the studies. It is in mineral waters in Europe, and it does benefit teeth. Sodium monofluorophosphate, I'm sorry, I'm nervous when I speak, has been used as a rat poison. It is a neurotoxin, and it has molecularly similar. Fluorine and chlorine both interfere with the receptors in our thyroids for receiving an uptake of iodine. So it tends to cause, fluoride tends to cause obesity, hypothyroidism, and along with the things that you were talking about, the neurotoxins. Then I wanted to say the risk is especially important for developmental children, and that's why you have the notices on toothpaste to not let them swallow it, because it damages developmental children more than adults. The last thing, I was so excited you brought up the costs, because I think that the costs and the safety, not only to people, but to like the bay, the wildlife, the costs of if there was ever this is a poison, and if it's ever an earthquake, or like chlorine, if it's ever put out in mass, it harms all of us, and it's right on the bay in the water treatment plant. Okay, so I had more to say, but I'm getting down to my end. But thank you so much for bringing this up for discussion again. It's really valuable.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is John Sullivan. I've lived here since '78 and raised my children here, and I'm a pediatrician. I've been taking care of sick kids for a while, and I work in the field of developmental disabilities as well. So I know that many people have already got their minds made up about this, and you can get on the internet and see what you want to see. But I guess the procedural question I have is that I don't know whether having the city put this on the ballot is having the council specifically endorse or promote Mr. Patino's views, which he's entitled to do, but I don't know. How does that work if the council is saying we want to put this on the ballot? Is that a tacit endorsement or endorsement of one point of view or not? Because I get some people who got their minds made up already. And I should tell you, for information, that actually people in the medical field really do follow this and take it seriously, and are interested in how that works. And everybody's quoting a lot of supposed facts. So there certainly is a lot. There's two sides to this, and I think I would welcome that being decided by the people. But I just think I feel a little uncomfortable because I know this is your issue, Mr. Patino, and you got your own opinions about it, whether the council is endorsing voting yes or no on whatever that is. How are ballot things usually put on the ballot, and does that reflect individual council members' particular axes to grind? How does that usually work? Thank you, I appreciate it. Yeah. I don't know if that's a reasonable question.
Well, we will respond to all public comments at the end. We won't comment on individual comments yet.
Hi, good evening, and I thank you very much for putting us back out for discussion, and especially since the neurotoxin studies have come out, which weren't out in 2006. And I feel like that this issue was so heated before that people suffered a lot who stood up and said, hey, we know some stuff about fluoride and we have real concerns about it. Were treated like that they weren't intelligent and that they were just anti-American, just all kinds of things that were awful. And so I really know that fluoride, I'm a retired nurse. As a nurse, I had to give people medications. They had to be exact doses, and children's doses are entirely different and smaller, and for reasons, because they can be harmful. Fluoride is a drug. It's classified as a drug. And you know what that means? That means that it's toxic. And you say, oh, are my blood pressure medicines toxic? Yes, and that is why your doctor gives it to you in a specific dose over a specific time, not to exceed this much. So to me, I want to ask the dentists in the area who want to really think that I'm not a smart nurse because I question fluoride, and I think the better part of valor is to say, if there is danger in everyone drinking it as much as they want and little children drinking it all the time, then we shouldn't stop. We should hold a moratorium. And because the council was the one who put it in, why can't you guys just say, hold? It's on us as the council to say, we want to protect the people. We're not saying we think it's bad. We want our children to have it on our teeth. But people are having concerns and saying this might be causing irreparable damage to our children. Let's make a halt on it. And have you ever seen the bags of it? Poison, poison, poison. It's not like what the dentists have in their office. It's different. And you ask any dentist, could I have fluoride for my child? They'll say, sure, let me write you a prescription. So I say, what dentist in this town, in Bayside, anywhere, will say, hey, Arcata has a prescription for as much fluoride as it needs whenever it drinks water, whenever. Is there a dentist that would stand up and say, I know it's safe enough that everybody can drink it, I give the prescription? Because they can't do that. They would be held liable, and that would be a grievous offense of their position as a doctor. So I'm really grateful, and I pray that we can actually discuss and that people can say, let me think about this. If it's scientific new information, let me be open as a medical person. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi. So the people of the city of Arcata do ordain as follows: prohibition of sodium fluoride additives into the Arcata city water supply. In order to ensure that the public water of Arcata is safe to drink, it is unlawful and a public nuisance for any person, agent, or any public or private water system to add sodium fluoride to the public water supply. Currently, sodium fluoride is added to the Arcata City Public's water supply. The chemical is added for the purpose of medication rather than to make the water safe or potable. Sodium fluoride is a hazardous waste created when industrial aluminum is produced. Many countries do not add this toxic waste to their water supply, and many cities in the United States also do not practice the addition of the chemical to public waters. Neighboring cities such as Reading in 2002 and Crescent City in 2012 have rejected fluoride. Much closer to home, Manila also rejected fluoride, with Measure A in 2008 a landslide vote of 164 to 60, keeping Manila tap water free of sodium fluoride. Opponents of adding the chemical to public water cite no proof of safety and also no proof of efficiency concerning the notions that the addition benefits teeth. Opponents also cite that fluoridated toothpaste leads to contact poison control if swallowed, due to the well-known toxicity of the chemical. Furthermore, fluoridation opponents object to the aspect that the addition of fluoride to the public drinking water is medication without public consent and should be subject to established moral and ethical guidelines. Finally, addition of this chemical cost the taxpayers. In Reading 2002 fluoride rejection, Reading City Manager Mike Warren addresses in his report to the City Council fluoride-related city costs. The Reading fluoride prohibition was attributed by many to be the budgetary decision and disclosure of costs associated with storage, transport, and administration of the hazardous chemical. Concerning the supposed medical application concerning the addition of fluoride to the water supply, the risk to the brain posed by fluoridation additives is an unreasonable and irresponsible risk, as it is now understood that fluoride's predominant effect on tooth decay comes from topical contact with teeth and not ingestion. Because there is little known benefit in swallowing fluoride, there is no justification to expose the public. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you, Emily, for reading an example of a ballot initiative or ballot measure that could be put. So that has been emailed to Paul Patino. I'm not sure if he shared it with the rest of the council, but it's something that you all can use as reference. So my name's Kelsey Reedy. I am a resident of Arcata. I am an employee of the county, but I am here as an individual, a concerned citizen. And I really, really appreciate Paul for bringing this up. This is something that I've had an issue with since I moved here 10 years ago. And so I was really surprised when I learned. I just assumed that Arcata did not have fluoride in their water, but that is not the case. So there's always going to be debates. I know that we have a lot of public health people in the room, and so I get that like the concern of like young people's dental health is important and it's valid, and we should be doing things to improve it. But giving unconsensual medication is not the answer. We can, how about instead of granting $60,000 to save a historical building, how about we put more money into dental care, or we get more money into doing publicity on how to increase the increase the dental health that we have here, to make it something fun for youth. How about we have like incentives for youth who have healthy teeth? Many ideas that we could do with that money in particular, but the reason why I'm not okay with this is because this is our rights as human beings to get to decide what medication we are on. And so for it to be put in our water, and so we have to decide whether we want to be hydrated and be medicated, or not be hydrated, or purchase our water. I know that we are all about not using single-use containers, so if people want to avoid drinking this water, they have to go buy things in single-use containers. So we're kind of not helping our situation in that. So there's a million reasons why fluoride is harmful in my mind and many other professionals' minds, but the reality is that this is a rights issue. This is something that is not consensual for the county or for the city. I wish that the council would just see this as an obvious safety hazard and just get it out of our water without having to go to the ballot, but obviously, I know that that would not go over well with some of the community, as there are going to be some strong people who are in opposition to it being removed. So I do appreciate that, and I just want to list a couple organizations who are also against it. So the American Academy of Environmental Medicine, the Fluoride Action Network, Food and Water Watch, Organic Consumers Association, International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicity are all opposed to fluoride in the water. Thanks.
Thank you.
My name's Joanne McGarry, and I wasn't necessarily going to speak on this issue, but water is life. I think about that a lot. I think about Flint, Michigan, and I think about the subject that's going to come up for discussion with the City Council on 5Gs. And how we as a community, we talked about community building through preserving historic landmark buildings, but we also need to talk about community building in terms of what we do and what we drink and what we eat and how we interact with each other, and for the 7 generations to come, a concept that the indigenous people like to remind us about. And we're talking about children here. And I do drink out of a stainless steel, plastic-free container, but I got my water out of a really wonderful little functional water fountain here in the building. But as I'm drinking it, I'm thinking I'm drinking fluoride. And so I also want to remind the council of the concept of precautionary principle that the EU implements when they are discussing matters such as this, and that why don't we, as a progressive city in Arcata, consider precautionary principles and immediately stop putting fluoride in the water and see how that goes over with the community. And if the discussion can go on and it's determined that those in the majority want it to be put back in the water, then perhaps that is done. But let us take it out of the water right now and use the precautionary principles. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Lauren. I am an Arcata resident. I'm also a dental care coordinator through the Dental Transformation Initiative local dental pilot project through Smile Humboldt Family, which is geared towards children 12 and under, Humboldt County children who have a history or current dental decay and who are on Medi-Cal. Childhood caries, also known as cavities, is the #1 childhood disease, above childhood diabetes. One of the ways in which we can help with that is preventative measures through fluoridation of water. It is clinically proven. It is supported by the ADA. It's supported and touted by the CDC as the top 10 20th century medical successes. And I hear that there are 2 sides to every story. I'm excited to read these new research papers that are coming out, but at the same time, this is an issue that affects all of the Arcata residents, and therefore all Arcata residents should have an opportunity to vote on this again. All of Arcata residents should have an opportunity to read these studies, to think about them critically, and to talk to their dentists, to talk to people whose entire lives and careers are built upon serving this community and the oral health of this community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Wendy Rowan,
I'm the former executive director of First 5 Humboldt. I retired 4 years ago, and my successor, Mary Ann Hansen, couldn't be here this evening, so I have a statement from her that I would like to share with you. The Humboldt County Children and Families Commission, better known as First 5 Humboldt, supports the fluoridation of Arcata's drinking water to protect the oral health of children in our communities. This should be an evidence-based decision by the council, and the evidence is very strong that fluoridation is a safe, economical, and effective preventive public health measure that reduces tooth decay by about 25% in children. Community water fluoridation is in place for about 73% of all Americans, and it is recommended by nearly all public health, medical, and dental organizations, including the American Dental Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the U.S. Public Health Service, and the World Health Organization. The Federal Center for Disease Control named community water fluoridation one of the 10 great public health achievements of the 20th century because of its contribution to the large decline in cavities in the United States since the 1960s. Extensive studies of the effects of community water fluoridation have been conducted over many decades, in part because fluorine and fluoride are known to pose health risks at high doses. A 1999 report by the CDC reviewing the available research concluded that studies to date have produced no credible evidence of an association between fluoridated drinking water and an increased risk for cancer. Removing fluoride from Arcata's drinking water would place an unequal burden on those community members least able to afford or access preventive dental care and fluoride-containing products, which would result in an increase in preventable tooth decay in children, and does not appear to provide any evidence-based benefits to the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laura McEwen. I'm the Oral Health Coordinator at Public Health, and I oversee 2 oral health programs. Childhood caries is the most chronic childhood condition, and I see it every day in the work that we do at the county. We keep statistics on the kindergarten oral health assessment of our county. Unfortunately, Arcata's children, approximately 30% of incoming children, have untreated dental decay. And that's not a number we're proud of, but it's a number we can be horrified by when we start looking at other areas with unfluoridated water. Some of the school districts have untreated decay rates that are over 50%, approaching 60%. That means our youngest citizens are entering school with the challenges of dental caries, abscesses, and pain, and they are challenged with this, so it's difficult to learn, to pay attention, and grow into the productive citizens we all want them to be. Community water fluoridation is safe, effective, and equitable. Whether you're rich or poor, you drink the water and you gain the benefits. I hope that you will consider thoughtfully this to continue the many-year history that you have had of fluoridating the water. The citizens of Arcata have spoken in a previous election that this was something that they would like to continue, and I hope that you will continue it as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Howard Pollack. I was introduced by Dr. Belusho. I'm this professor at University of California, San Francisco. My pleasure to be here tonight. I live in Berkeley, which is fluoridated. I work in San Francisco, which is fluoridated. And you should know that more than 60% of Californians served by public water supplies now have access to fluoridated water. That's more people, 22 million plus, in this state that have access to fluoridated water than any other state. And that has changed dramatically in the last 20 years with the fluoridation of communities in Sacramento, in San Diego in 2011, and more recently in San Jose, the wholesaler system there started to fluoridate a couple of years ago. You're considering, and I certainly respect everybody's opinions here and how well prepared people are to present their statements. And I know that there's a whole body of literature opposing fluoridation through the Fluoride Action Network, through NICECOF and other groups. But I hope you've also looked at the other information that's available. For instance, this is a book. You mentioned Paul Carnett's book. This is a book called The Fluoride Wars. It's called How a Modest Public Health Measure Became America's Longest-Running Political Melodrama. It's written by two hydrologists that don't have a stake in fluoridation, but it's well-researched, and it comes down on saying, yeah, there are problems with both sides on fluoridation, but the credibility of the people supporting fluoridation is overwhelming, and it's well referenced, and I recommend that you read this. It's available online. I'm a member of the American Dental Association's National Fluoridation Advisory Council, and in 2018 we published Fluoridation Facts, which is available online for free. You can download it as a PDF, and it addresses the issue of neurological impact. And the question, it's a question and answer format, it's well referenced. It says, does ingestion of water fluoridated at recommended levels have any effect on intelligence, IQ in children, or neurological impact? And the brief answer is the best available science-based evidence does not establish a causal relationship. There may be associations, but it does not establish a causal relationship. And the authors, Christine Till and others in Canada, readily admit that it doesn't prove that fluoride causes IQ deficit. There is an association. That is very different scientifically. So with that, I just want to thank you for hearing me out. My name again is Howard Pollack. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dawn Arledge, a resident of Arcata, and mainly not to get on either side of the issue, but I'm a little concerned about this being brought up by council rather than brought forward by citizens for a ballot measure. The voters have already spoken on this issue, and I believe if it should go to ballot measure, it should not be introduced by the council, but be introduced by citizens who have the ability to do that. And so I think we should respect the voters have already weighed in on this issue, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carpani Burns, and I thank you for this opportunity to discuss this issue because I personally am not a fan of poison. It's poison. Putting poison into the water is like, why would you do that? Especially since there are other ways to treat teeth. There's fluoride topical, there's diet, there's drinking spring water, there's so many other choices. I had an experience last year, which 2 years before that, because I'm aging, I was taking an osteoporosis medicine. And indeed, the test showed that my bone was growing. It was getting better. But then I had to stop that because it was attacking my digestive. So I stopped that, went off for a while, and then my doctor suggested that I try a different one. And so I said, well, okay, I'll try it. I came home and I read the sheet on the back of the side effects and what do they call it? Alter indicators or something. And after I got through the 3 pages of the side effects, I just went, I don't think so. It may help, but it's going to cause any number one of these other things. So I felt like that personal choice to not do that. I may die of osteoporosis, but I'm not going to die of one of those other things. It's poison. Don't put poison in the water. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Isabel. I live in Arcata. I was just reminded of a story that during World War II in Norway, they weren't able. I appreciate what the last speaker said, that there's all these other factors that affect our dental health. And during World War II in Norway, they weren't able to get refined sugar in the country because the Nazis blockaded their supplies. And during that time, there was the lowest rate of cavities in Norwegian children that there ever was. And after that time, when they were able to get refined sugar once again, it went up. And so I was thinking about what Kelsey said. What are the ways? How could we use city resources to care for children, rather than medicating everyone without their consent? Toothpaste with fluoride is not hard to find. You can find it everywhere. It's usually cheaper than the toothpaste without fluoride. So I don't think that is the issue that the city needs to solve for everyone without asking us. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rodney Oyen. I'm the Deputy Director with North Coast Children's Services. I'm going to move this up. I won't go a lot into, a lot of people said a lot of different things about the science. I think that's important to really base actions on science and the actual knowledge that we have. I think looking at research is super important. I mean, the council member mentioned recent studies. I would be interested to see what those say and the methods that they were done by. Methods of research can vary from study to study, so not all studies are necessarily as valid or reliable. So I do think that's a point that you all should consider when you're making this decision. The access to dental care for children in our communities. We serve children in this city as well as across Humboldt and Del Norte counties. There is a lack of access, as I think everyone here recognizes, and caries is a huge problem. So I would just caution you all to not be hasty in your decisions and really think about what information you're relying on to making your decisions so that it is based in valid science. I can go on the internet and find studies that say climate change isn't happening, that maybe the earth is flat, who knows. But I would just really caution you all to be level-headed when you're making these decisions. It's an emotional topic for many people, and so I think it's important to temper those emotions and have dialogue, and actually, having public participation is great. And I want to appreciate the last speaker too. I think that was brave of her to come up here, and yeah, thank you all.
Robert Berg. I'm a dentist. I moved up here in 1973 to work for the Yurok Indian tribe and subsequently practiced general dentistry in Eureka for 40 years. And I'm currently the oral health director for Humboldt County. And I'd just like to say that the people that I see the children don't have access to a lot of the advantages that some of the wealthier families have, and do not have the access to the fluoride treatments in dental offices. Their access to dentistry is limited to overcrowded clinics, and I would like to see the fluoride remain in the water. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Connie Stewart. Dr. Berg was my doctor for 25 years, and I was reminded of how I met him
I went in I had a root canal I needed, and I thought he was going to tell me to pull it, and he didn't. He let me pay him $10 a month until I paid it off. Not every doctor does that. You know, the one thing I have in common with all of the council members, besides the thing you think I'm going to say, is that none of us have children. And fluoride is an equity issue. It really, truly is. It's not about whether I can afford to go to the dentist 3 times a year. And I do now. But not everybody can afford to. And unfortunately, I'm in the Open Door Board. We work really hard to try to recruit more dentists, but we can't do it for everyone. And I do know, because we do research at the California Center for Rural Policy, that communities that have fluoride in their water have children with less caries than those that don't. The only reason we are having this conversation today is because Arcata has less than 10,000 hookups. Because state law requires communities that have 10,000 hookups to have fluoride. So that's really the only reason that this is an opportunity to have this conversation. I want to make it clear, with the majority of communities in California, they have fluoride in the water. It's only rural communities that have less than 10,000 hookups, or communities that have separate water systems, that are struggling to get fluoride in their water. And so I would also, as my colleagues say, if this is really an issue that should become before the voters, we would ask that the community that wants to support this put the ballot measure together, put the signatures together, and put it on, not for you all to do it. So thank you very much, and all the best to everyone here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laura Olson, and thanks for having us here to discuss this. I'm the executive director of the Smullen Foundation, a local family foundation whose priority is health and education. Prior to that, I was 7 years with the California Endowment, a statewide foundation whose priority was health and equity in particular. And before that, I was with the Humboldt Area Foundation for 10 years. And during that time, I was grateful to work with a number of people who were on the board of the Union Labor Health Foundation, specifically a health organization. And during that time, all of these organizations have had a very positive desire to keep fluoride in water because of the equity issue that has come up a number of times. I think it's really easy to say that people can get a prescription for fluoride or brush their teeth with fluoride toothpaste. But the reality is, and the dentists and the folks that work in the dental field know that in this community, lots of families don't brush their children's teeth or have access to that. It's easy for us with privilege to stand here and say that other people should do these things. But it really isn't happening, and it is an equity issue. And if you want to talk about budgets and money spent, the amount of money spent in the community around the issue of tooth decay in young people, and when you get to people in high school who have had these problems with their teeth, their self-esteem and the challenges that they have as a result of that can change their lives. So I think it's a really important issue, and I know there's a lot of science on both sides, and I hope you'll be very careful about looking at that and reviewing. There's a reason that the medical professionals come out in general in favor of fluoride, and that it's required in so many water systems. And so I hope you'll be very careful about your decision in this area. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Elizabeth Finger. I'm a 40-year resident of Humboldt County. I live in Sunnybrae. I thank Councilman Member Patino for bringing this issue up. I believe it is appropriate for the City Council to put this ballot initiative forward, since the City Council originally voted to fluoridate Arcata's water. I understand and hear what other people are saying about it being an equity issue. I think it's important to remember also, if a family wants to protect their children from the neurotoxin that fluoride is, that the only way to remove fluoride from water is with a reverse osmosis system, or by purchasing water that has been treated through reverse osmosis. That becomes also a class and economic issue in terms of people being able to provide non-fluoridated water for their children. Unlike chlorine, boiling water concentrates fluoride, it doesn't remove it. And it's not only the water that people drink and that the food is prepared with, but it's absorbed transdermally through bathing. Any food that's prepared in a community or a facility that has fluoridated water, there is then fluoride in that food. Studies show that the recommended dosage of fluoride is exceeded just by consuming, for most people, by consuming just processed foods. There's no way to control the dosage. There's no other medication, this is medical treatment, that's being provided for people, that there's no way to control the dosage. And there's no consent of those ingesting it. It is a neurotoxin, and there are issues about cumulative impacts, all the different sources of fluoride that people are ingesting. I really encourage you to go ahead and put this on the ballot. The vote before was 14 years ago. It was very confusing language. I hope that this could be very straightforward language, and that it also, as someone mentioned, extend to, if there's any way to do it, to Bayside and Jacoby Creek and other areas that consume this water. And the direct application to teeth and other ways. I understand that it's that I am a person of privilege and of means. I hope that there could be expanded services for those vulnerable populations, so that there could be topical application and other dental health approaches without it being put in the water. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else who has not spoken who would like to speak on this issue, please come forward. Seeing none, I will close public comment and take it back to council.
You know, I think that I'd like to get an answer from our attorney about the appropriateness of a council member bringing up a ballot measure.
The council has legal authority to place a measure on the ballot. Whether it becomes tacit endorsement by the all members of the council, that's a political issue and a political sort of optic situation. If it's put on the ballot by 3-1, does that one person get necessarily allied? That's not really a legal issue, but the council may place a measure on the ballot.
Yeah, I'm assuming anytime the council wants to put a measure on a ballot, there's going to be a view of who put it on or why, but it is our right to do that. Also, fluoride was put in the water, in Arcata by council ordinance, not by a ballot measure. So the council decided to put it in whatever 19 years, 1950, 60, or whatever it was, okay? They decided to put it in. The truth is, as a council, we could take it out by ordinance. And some people have referenced that. Respecting that we had a vote on this, I agreeing with Michael Winkler that since we had a vote on this, it probably would be more, I don't know what word to put on it, for us to put it as a ballot measure instead of imposing it. My personal feeling is I'd like to remove it right now, but that would be the will of the council. So in order to find out, I would say I would make a motion to remove fluoride from our water by council ordinance. And if there's a second, then we can move on it.
I feel like that would very strongly disrespect the previous vote of 2006, so I am very disappointed that you would make such a motion.
I'm making it as a question, okay?
I'm not going to second that.
So obviously we don't have a second, so, you know, I only did it as a perfunctory measure so that you'd know what's going on, okay? I know that the council didn't feel that way. So I just wanted you to see that. But again, now I'll make a motion to put it on the ballot, to remove fluoride from our drinking water for a ballot measure.
So I have some comments. You know, I have spent time considering the literature on both sides of the issue. At this time, I'm personally not interested in removing fluoride from our water, especially after hearing from so many of our local medical practitioners and their firsthand experience with this issue in our area very specifically. I agree with the earlier speaker. It's an equity issue that affects those with the greatest need, low-income children. I also agree with the earlier speakers who said this is something that should be brought forward by the voters themselves. And, you know, I feel like we as a council have a precedent of making decisions ourselves on very divisive issues. And, you know, I also feel like a good bellwether of public opinion is the public's willingness to collect, I believe it's just a 10%, threshold's 10% of registered voters in the city. So I feel like that's a pretty reasonable threshold that's achievable if there's, you know, just a moderate amount of interest in bringing this issue forward. So that right now, that's my opinion.
So just because there was a motion introduced, there wasn't a second. Okay, so I've been wanting to kind of weigh in.
Introduced and the tradition is for the mayor not to second motions. So there is no second, so the motion dies.
So if there's no second to motion, then there's no action for us to take tonight. What I just wanted to say, when I first got on the council, I was reached out to by some constituents that were very interested in this issue of removing fluoride from our water. And what I told them then is the same thing that I'll say now. This was voted on by the voters by a citizen initiative. It was voted overwhelmingly down. And that I think it's most appropriate that if the citizens of Arcata want to readdress this issue, that they can organize to put it back on the ballot. That has been an available option since this was voted on back in 2006. So that's been my stance in meeting with folks on that, and so I just think it's important to just articulate that here for the record, even though we don't have a second for the motion.
All right. So that is all on this agenda item. All right. Next is new business item D, introduce ordinance number 1529, revising the Arcata Municipal Code Title 3, Public Safety Chapter 2, parking regulations to amend Article 9, stopping, standing, and parking, and Article 11, stopping, standing, or parking restricted or prohibited on certain streets. Could I have a staff report, please?
We're bringing this item forward based mostly on complaints from citizens. The police department receives many complaints, mostly in the summertime, regarding the confusion about whether or not we are enforcing parking. HSU does have summer session. It's not readily on their website, and so there's just a couple weeks when the semester gets out at the end of summer or spring semester, and then a couple weeks before fall semester starts that they're not in session, and the rest of the summer they are. Just alone seeing the streets kind of empty in summer leads people to think that HSU is not in session and they feel like they can park without enforcement. And then in researching this issue, we discovered that now HSU is enforcing parking year-long, regardless of whether or not they're in session. So we're recommending an amendment to the Arcata Municipal Code for consistency with HSU enforcement and to simplify, honestly, to make it more understandable for the citizen that maybe isn't from this area or a student. In addition, the rest of our parking enforcement is enforced year-round. While looking at the ordinance, we discovered that the vehicle code changed and now requires cities to specify metered zones and rates by ordinance, not resolution. So while we were making these amendments, we went ahead and put in our existing metered areas and the rate. And then lastly, we had many different sections in the municipal code that specified different timed parking zones. And a function of this was when HSU is not in session, we needed to break it out into the different zones. When we remove that language, there's really no purpose to have so many different sections in the municipal code. So we're recommending combining it all into a limited time parking section to simplify the municipal code, and all the details of those zones and the time limits are specified by resolution.
Go ahead. No, I have no comment. So I will open this to the public. So if any member of the public would like to comment on this item, please come forward. Seeing none, I will close public comment and take it back to council.
I'll make a motion to introduce ordinance number 1529, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata, amending Article 9, stopping, standing, and parking, and Article 11, stopping, standing, or parking restricted or prohibited on certain streets of Chapter 2, Traffic Regulations, Title 3, Public Safety of the Arcata Municipal Code to revise timed parking and parking meter zone regulations, waive reading of the text and consent to read by title only.
Very good.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, next item E, ordinance number 1525 for introduction, amending Title 2, Chapter 10, Sections 3102A1 and 3102D of the Arcata Municipal Code to make a biennial CPI adjustment to campaign contribution limitations. Could I have a staff report, please?
Certainly. So this happens every election year, every 2 years. The ordinance that the council has in the municipal code was adopted by ballot measure, and it allows a biennial CPI adjustment to occur. So this would raise your campaign contribution limitations to $200, no, I'm sorry, from $200 to $210. There are a lot of nuances in the laws associated with campaign contribution limitations, and I summarized some of the applicable laws in your staff report.
So, comment? No. Comment? I have no comment. So if any member of the public would like to speak on this item, please come forward. Seeing none, I will close public comment and take it back to council.
I'll make a motion to introduce ordinance number 1525, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Arcata, amending the Arcata Municipal Code to make consumer price index adjustments to campaign contribution limitations, waive reading of the text, and consent to read by title only.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No opposed? And so next is oral and written communications. This time is provided for people to address the council or to submit written communications on matters not on the agenda. At the conclusion of all oral and written communications, the council may respond to statements. Any request that requires council action will be set by the council for a future agenda or referred to staff. And I will limit people to 3 minutes. So if anybody would like to speak on an item that's not on the agenda, please come forward.
Hello, my name is Key. I have been a resident of Arcata since the 16-month anniversary of David Josiah Lawson's murder. First, I want to acknowledge that we are settlers on Wiyat land. This is more than just a land acknowledgement, but also recognizing our statuses, our default statuses as settlers, means that we have to do the work to become guests of this land and the original stewards of the land. I'm here today because Ms. Charmaine Lawson couldn't be here, even though she wanted to. She shouldn't have to be here. The labor that she has done on behalf of her murdered son is far more than any person should have to do. And she will, as we all know, continue doing that as well. I'd like to note for the public that is still here that the police who was there opening the door when you first came in was a prop, that the cops here in the city council office are being used as a fear tactic from the city of Arcata, used to intimidate potential protesters, and I will have the city council and everyone else know that we will not be silenced. Tonight, I'm speaking primarily to white women and gender nonconforming or non-binary white folk. David Josiah Lawson's murderer is a white man, but it was white women who are also responsible for his death, and all white women are complicit in perpetuating racism and white supremacy. Josiah's killing is therefore not only about a white man's unchecked violence and access to privilege and the benefit of the doubt, despite his violent history, it is also about the ways in which white women are responsible for upholding white supremacy, and therefore we ought to see ourselves responsible for joining people of color and other marginalized individuals and communities in not only addressing but ending imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy. Hello, my name is David Lawson, and I will be attending Humboldt State University in the fall. I go to Rancho Verde High School, and I'll be majoring in criminal justice to become a lawyer and probably enter politics. The word man has been thrown around quite often in today's society. You're not a man because of how strong you are. You're not a man because you're the best athlete in your school or have the flashiest clothes. Being a man in the 21st century is about the character of your heart. Being a man is so much more emotional than it is physical. To be a man, you have to stand up for what you believe in. You have to show love and compassion for others. It's a man who's honest and dependable, a man who stands by his words. A man takes care of people around him, not just himself. To be a man is to be responsible. It is to feel shame at the sight of what seems to be unmerited misery. It is to take pride in the victories of our comrades. Being a man in the 21st century isn't about the quantity of one's life, but the quality of how you treat others. Thank you. If you couldn't tell, those were David Josiah Lawson's words. Though he was a high school student when he wrote them, he was able to give a clear vision for men and all of humanity to inspire to. His sophomore year at Humboldt State, DJ was sitting with his friends at a party right here in Arcata when McKinleyville resident Lily Ortega approached him and began calling him racial slurs, accusing him and his friends of stealing her cell phone. Ortega's friend, Angelica McFarland, then pepper sprayed the group of students. At the end of the night, DJ and his girlfriend ended up getting stabbed. DJ didn't make it. It's been almost 34 months, yet nobody has even been held accountable, even with DNA evidence showing that Lily's boyfriend, Kyle Zollner, was almost unquestioningly the murderer. Before the city even attempted to test the murder weapon for DNA, retired FBI investigator Tom Parker assessed the situation, agreeing that Zollner was most likely behind the knife. He said, "The arrest that they made that night of the homicide was based on substantial probable cause," Parker said. "There is no other explanation for any other perpetrator. All we want is justice for DJ Lawson, his family, and our community." Say his name. David Josiah Lawson.
I was speaking on an issue. This
No,
is
she
public
hasn't
comment.
spoken during this public comment period yet.
I'm Carpani Burns, and Charmaine can't be here. So I am once again asking for David Josiah Lawson. Where is the Foundation Police report? Have you received it? If not, when will you receive it? Has the bill been paid or not? When is that payment planned if it hasn't been paid? Say his name. David Josiah Lawson. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak on, who has not spoken, would like to speak on a matter not on the agenda, please come forward. Seeing none, I will close public comment. Any comment from council? So council and staff reports. Staff reports.
Sorry, I thought you were going first.
Oh.
No, I'm skipping it tonight.
I'll just report that I believe it was last Friday, myself and Mayor Winkler went on a walk with some folks from HSU just to look at some possibilities of promoting the university on the city side during, maybe seasonal, during move-in week and preview week, and just to try to give people visiting HSU a little more of a welcoming feel when they come into the city. So we're talking about different ideas there. And at the last meeting, I was made the chair of the North Coast Unified Air Quality Management District, and that is my report.
Oh, congratulations. So I attended the Martin Luther King event, and the lead speaker, who generally tells a moving story, but I think a relatively light story, told a much heavier story and much more serious story, and that was interesting to hear him speaking from something that was so serious and so deeply felt, and I felt very moved by his story.
I'll just give a brief update. I'll send to the city manager some documents to send out to the council that outlines the recommendations that the Governor's Council of Regional Homeless Advisors gave earlier in January. So there's a comprehensive crisis response strategy that outlines about 40 different specific policies that we would like the state legislature and the governor to take action on. And then there's also a letter that we wrote to the governor that outlines
explains some of those policy recommendations, but then also makes a recommendation for government, both local and state, to have a legally enforceable mandate to address homelessness. There's a lot more information that will come around about that, but that will require a statewide ballot initiative this November. So I will just make sure you get those documents so that you have some time to digest it and what that means. And then we are in communication with the governor's office about what that could look like on the ground, and if there's opportunities to do a pilot here locally. So I'll keep you all updated on that. But.
All right, thank you. And we have no dates of future meetings, no closed sessions, and we are adjourned.